Hi everyone, this is Janae with Inside Sales. Welcome to our Seek-List Tips and Tricks webinar. We're going to give everyone just a couple of minutes to trickle into the webinar. I know you're busy and probably pop from meeting to meeting just like me. So in the meantime, why don't you show me or tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from. Be great to get to know who's listening. Or not. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up that it's okay to go ahead and get started. So yeah, today we wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into Seek-Lists. If you've been through the implementation process, then you had an initial training, several workshops probably around setting up Seek-Lists. So we wanted to do more deep dive into those lists and some of the things that I've learned over my experience with Inside Sales. So a little bit about me. If I can, there we go. So I've been with Inside Sales for 3 years. I've probably had my hands in over 350 implementation projects. So those range from small business to all the way to enterprise deals and everything in between. So I've seen a lot. I've worked through a lot of solutions. It's really my favorite part of the job is the diversity. I am Salesforce Administrator certified. Working on my platform certification. Just got to pull away a few minutes here and there to get that taken care of. So we wanted to find out a little bit about who's listening to the webinar. So we've got a poll. We're looking for if you are a Salesforce or Inside Sales Administrator, or maybe you more identify with the Sales Operations Enablement role or the Sales Manager role. So if you want to take a quick second to poll, to complete that poll, and that way I'll just know a little bit more about who I'm talking to and hopefully be able to, customize as much as possible. Okay, great. So we're looking at a dominant portion of administrators, which is great because I will go into a little bit of detail about formulas and process builders, so it will be good if you have some background in that. Sales and operations and enablement, hopefully you'll get some really great ideas, for different strategies that you might be able to implement. Sales management, that's pretty self-explanatory. So for you guys, I'll try to point to, dashboards, reporting, things like that you can follow up with your administrators and see, after placing something, implementing something, how's it going? How's it working? What do we need to change? And reporting back on this. Now this other, that's a little bit curious. So maybe if you want to post in the Q&A, if you were an other, what that might be. And hopefully this webinar will still be applicable to you. Okay, so now that I know a little bit about your role, my next question is, what's your current level of product knowledge? So am I talking to a bunch of new administrators and, the baton has been passed to you and you're just getting started, or maybe you've been in, post-implementation a few months, haven't had a chance to really, get too familiar with the product after what the implementation team did for you, or super duper experienced. Wow. Okay, so we're fairly even. Okay, great. Well, hopefully you'll find even a couple nuggets of information and some ideas from this webinar. So what we wanted to talk about today, we'll start off, especially for those that are new to Seek-Lists, new to their role, what is a Seek-List and what it is not. And I think it's good just to have that reminder. Then we'll go into some of my favorite features. I'm calling it secret and hidden, but they're really not. They're just out there in the open. not always highlighted during implementation and trainings and things like that. We don't have a whole lot of time to go into some of those really awesome details, the bells and whistles. Then I'll go over a few of the gotchas, the things that I encounter all the time, and you really want to keep those items in mind as you're developing your Seqless strategy. And then I have 3 strategies that I wanted to go over with you, and these are all strategies that I've implemented, not all 3 at any one particular customer, but you kind of want to pick and choose which one most applies, and bear in mind that it's even team by team by team. You'll have different strategies. And then at the very end, we'll have some best practices around Seqless, and then where to get more information. In the meantime, if you have questions, we have Michael Ray from our customer success team who will be monitoring the Q&A section and answering those questions. So thank you, Michael, for stepping in and doing that. And I also want to take a quick second and thank Joel Robertson, our community manager, who set up this webinar and invited me to present today. So we've got a really great team, and hopefully this will appeal to you. So without further ado, what is a Seqless? The definition of the Seqless provided by product team is Seqless are dynamic dialing lists, so dynamic, not static, that present reps records for dialing. So we present the record, we don't automatically dial it for you. And then, oops, sorry about that. Looks like the formatting got off a little bit. And then it's prioritized based on business rules set by administrators and managers. So the key here is that it's prioritized or stack lists and not subjective, where, this isn't where reps can okay, now I want to go here. Next, I want to maybe tackle this record or tackle that record. I'm feeling, warm and fuzzy about this type of record or industry or campaign. No, it's set, it's prioritized, it's there, and administrators and managers have a say in that. So a little deeper dive. Seqless are dynamic, right? They refresh every hour to pull in the records that are appropriate or have qualified for those filters and that criteria, and then also removing records that no longer meet that criteria. It refreshes at the top of the hour, and when I say at the top of the hour, it's more like anywhere from 10 minutes to the hour to 15 minutes after the hour. So what you want to anticipate is in that range, the Seqless will refresh, and it should only take moments to refresh the dialer cache. If you're seeing that it's now 20 minutes past the hour, 25 minutes past the hour, that might be a good idea to contact support and find out what's going on. Okay, so giving you a little bit of what to expect. Then we've got these are dynamic lists. It's not a one-time use list. It's not your Saturday chore list where you're checking it off, and when you're done with your chore list, you throw it in the garbage and you go to a movie or something. This is dynamic because we're setting a strategy, and we're going to stick to it as long as we're using that same strategy. And the great thing about this is we can put a strategy into play and then test off of it. We can look at the results off of that particular strategy, make small changes or large changes, and then go back and retest. So it's dynamic, it's always updating. Seqless present reps records for dialing. Reps are not robots. Okay, so we'll give them the record, but they ultimately have to elect to dial or not. This will also give them the opportunity to review activity history, to do their pre-call motion, and for the sales management team and the sales enablement team, be sure to coach your reps not to deliberate too long. You've already gone through the work of finding those really great records for them. So we want to encourage reps to get a record, review very quickly, 30 seconds, minute at max, and then dial. Right? You were hired because you're amazing at sales. Trust that, and just get on the phone. Okay, C-lists are stacked and prioritized business rules determined by administrators and managers. So think about it like this cake. Thank you, Pinterest. So at the very top, we've got hot new leads. Those are, the most delicious, the ones we want first. Next is what used to be maybe those hot new leads, but now are now on dials 2 to 4. And because of the C-list, we can pull those apart and we can deliver them 48 hours, from one dial to the next. Then, maybe we've got a new campaign. And it's pretty high priority, but still doesn't go all the way up to the top. Take that top precedence. We still want to get those hot new ones in first. But campaign ABC up to 9 dials. Then we've got those same leads that came through earlier, and we're now on dials 5 to 8, but we're spacing them out a little bit longer. Maybe another campaign, and then we throw in our nurturing leads there at the bottom and space them a week apart. Now, what I want to emphasize here is that this strategy is only as effective maybe as you communicate it to your reps. If your reps come back and ask you to maybe change things around, or even as management you determine, hey, campaign ABC actually is now the top priority and we need to focus on that. The C-list gives you that flexibility where you can raise the priority, lower the priority, move things around. Just be really careful, because we don't want to end up with this. Okay, so keeping a clear strategy and communicating that to your team makes it so we don't have a complete disaster. This cake is probably more like the kind of cake that I would make instead of the first one. All right. Great. So moving on, some of my favorite secret hidden features of C-list. So as a little girl, I loved the idea of those, secret doors, and my grandmother had a little secret hidden door, and it, had all sorts of daydreams about it. And, now we've got this, you can put really cool hidden doors in. Once again, thank you, Pinterest, right? Most often, though, those secret doors end up leading to something a little more functional. Like about a couple years ago, I was putting dishes away in this newer house that I had just gotten into, and I pulled the drawer out and saw something and started investigating and realized that there was an entry under the island after I pulled everything out. It was super exciting. My kids are gathering around and we're looking for buried treasure and stuff like that. But really, it was just a functional hole in the ground to get under the house, right? So often those, secret hidden doors are just more functional, and they're more like this than anything, super glamorous, but still very, very helpful. So my first favorite secret feature is that C-list will automatically filter out records if the do not call checkbox is marked. Something that, as we're building our strategy, we always want to be cognizant of. We want to, keep the company safe from litigation. And it's not always at the front of our minds, right? So we do that for you. Next is those utilize the business and consumer hours feature. So it's closer to the top when you're building that C-list, and it will, if you select business or consumer hours, once again, it will filter in records or filter them out based on the time zone they're in. And the time zone is going to be dependent upon the area code of the number that you're calling. Okay, not always a perfect indication of time zone, but that's what we've got to go off of for the most part. I highly recommend these because we don't want to be that obnoxious call, too early in the morning or too late in the evening. Okay, and then another hidden feature, which, once again is not hidden at all, it's right there for everybody to see, is at the very bottom we've got a couple of checkboxes, and one of them is include records without phone numbers. So by default, and for a long time, Seqless automatically only brought records to the rep if they had a phone number. Makes sense, right? We're building a dialing list, it's got to have a phone number. I'd say, I don't know, maybe 6, 9, 12 months ago, we realized, okay, there is a situation where we don't have a phone number, but we still want to keep them in Cadence. We have an email address. We can, send an email when that record pops up. So consider this in your strategy. Do I want to contact or do I want to, present records to my reps if there's no phone number? If email is a larger priority. So considering those, 3 things, the do not call, the time zone, and the orange one, the one I just went over and can't quite remember. So looking at this list of 50 records, who is the best person to contact? Who are the best people? And they all look the same, right? But hidden within those 50 records, we've got some that it's too early to call or it's too late. We've got some that are do not calls. But we also have hidden there some really awesome golden records we want to make sure we get to. So the downside here, though, is I've only got, let's say, an hour, and I can usually contact and make 30 dials in that hour. So unfortunately, it means I'm missing out on these 6 green records that would have been really amazing for me to get a hold of, and it means I'm also I'm also going to be calling 4 records that are either too early or do not call. So the Seqlist is going to do some magic, kick those do not calls out, drop the too earlies, and rearrange those higher priority records up to the top. We're reminded that not all leads are created equal, and that's why we're putting in the time and we're putting in the effort to create this strategy so we can filter those up to the top for your reps. Now, the 4th hidden feature is that it would be helpful for the reps to know what it is they're calling. So of those, 12 records that are amazing, what category do they fall under? And so that was one of the other checkboxes at the bottom of your Seqlist. Show agents the names of the queries used. Now these are the queries, the query names that will be displayed. So make sure that it's clear to a rep at a quick glance what it is they're looking at. Make it, newly assigned to me. Boom, done. I know that those are new to me. These are for that campaign. These are for the working leads. If you hover over the reason, and I apologize, guys, the reason will be displayed for the rep in the dialer panel. So in working with the next record button, I click next record, boop, and then the reason will appear, and it will tell me newly assigned or campaign XYZ, and that's all going to be contained within the dialer panel on the left side. Okay. So I hope that those were helpful. Maybe you heard about them at the beginning and this was a good reminder. Then we've got, okay, careful with the gotchas. A big gotcha that you want to be aware of when you're developing your Seqlist strategy is ownership. This can really make or break a strategy, and you want, more often than not, this ends up being a huge discussion pre-implementation, so we can give records to the right reps. So first scenario is all of these reps own their own are listed as the owner of the record, so lead owner or contact owner. And it's very easy because then I can create one Seqlist 1. I can make it visible to everybody, and only Tasha is going to get Tasha's records, Tyler's going to get Tyler's records, and so on. So that's my, that would be best, but it's only possible if they actually own the record. The other option is if they don't own the record, then you're going to have to create multiple seek lists where you're only going to grant access to Karen. So Karen sees seek list 1, and you would do that here. Oh, that's really small. Okay, assign users. See how it says visible to certain groups of users, and then you have to say specific users, and then you can find that name in there. And then when you're building the seek list 1, you have to filter for maybe there's a custom field, you know, a BDR or you know, field rep or something. If Karen needs to contact all of Joe's records, Joe is her field rep, then within the seek list filtering we would specify field rep equals Joe. So keep the ownership in mind. The other several gotchas are there are limitations on seek lists to be aware of. So kind of going through these fairly quickly, and also keep in mind that these are, I took these right from our current documentation and page 22. So you have a limitation to the number of seek lists. So going back to the ownership slide, you know, you can see if we have to use the second scenario where everyone has their own seek list, we're going to max out of those seek lists pretty quickly, because what you've got is you've got a minimum of 10 seek lists, and then for every additional license, after 10, you get 1 additional seek list. So, but then it maxes out at 100. So if I've got 75 licenses, then I have 75 seek lists. But if each of those 75 users has to have their own list, that doesn't give me a lot of room to, you know, play around with maybe a special campaign seek list, or imagine as you're trying to, you know, test a strategy, if you don't have any wiggle room, you certainly don't want to take down somebody's seek list for the day just so you can test. So just be very cognizant of that limitation. There's also a limit to the number of dialing rules you can have per seek list. So, you know, going back to our cake, you know, each color was a dialing rule, and you can have up to 20 layers. That would be a ridiculous cake, by the way. Maybe it would have to be one of those crepe cakes or something. Okay, then we have within the dialing rule up to 5 filters. So, you know, as you can see, we're kind of funneling down, right? So take 1 layer of that cake and you have 5 filters. You know, maybe think of those as ingredients. We can have up to 7,000 records per dialing rule, okay? So you want to juggle the number of people that are using that seek list. If we go back to our ownership slide where everyone is accessing 1 seek list, then you want to keep this in mind, this record limitation in mind, because if you've got 20 people accessing the seek list and they all have, you know, 5,000 records that you're pulling into this 1 dialing rule, you're going to max out. I mean, you just have to be very careful. Now, if you are hitting that limitation, people, there is a field that you can contact support to enable, and this would help to average out the number of records per person. You know, and then you can also think if my reps really can only contact up to how much, 30, 40 records at most in an hour, and that's if they're just clicking next record, next record, next record, next record over and over. I mean, how quickly can they actually get through those records? So lots of things to consider while you're building these seek lists. If a seek list is inactive for a certain amount of days, it will be removed. Once again, call support, have it re-engaged, and then you can have up to 50 users on a seek list. Okay, we're about halfway done, 26 minutes in, which I'm very happy about because I've got 3 strategies that I wanted to review with you. These are strategies that I've implemented several times like I said at the beginning, they may not all apply to you. So let's talk this out. First one, hours since last call strategy. So some of you, this has been a pretty popular one. You may already have this implemented from your time with implementation, and it consists of either a very simple formula field, and this is what the formula field looks like, or a very complex formula. So if business hours are important to your strategy, then you could use this formula. And please don't worry about writing all of this down. We're going to make these slides in a printer-friendly version, so you'll have access to them after the webinar. But so what we would do is we would build these formula fields, one or the other, and maybe you could make that field available to the reps so they can see, how many hours since the last time I made a dial. If you wanted to include it in your list view results, that's also very helpful. So if they're, at a list view and a quick glance, maybe, sort down. That's one option. We're going, for the very simple, the first strategy is the simplest. So Seqlist can filter for that number of hours. If we, go back to our cake slide where we're looking for records for dials 2 and 3, and they need to be 24 hours apart. So that Seqlist dialing rule would look for a particular status, a contactable status, right? And then hours since last call greater or equal to 24. You can also use this field for sort criteria. This, I think, is more commonly used. So, I've pulled in a bucket of records, and I want to attack the records that I dialed furthest out, right? And so we're kind of just trying to cycle them through, but keep it evenly distributed. Now, you do have already existing in Salesforce last call time. Now, why would you implement this hours since last call instead of using the standard last call time field that's already there? And the reason is simplicity. It's straightforward. It's a number. It's not a date. So from an end user's perspective, a rep, I can quickly see number of hours. That's a lot easier to calculate in my mind than a day, 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, right? So and then also it's a lot easier on filtering, and we'll talk more about filtering. But to filter off of a number is going to be less work, right? Okay, so that was strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is our touches strategy. So there's a few different pieces that we'll go into this. Step number 1 is you're going to have to create 2 fields. The first is a number field, and then the second, is optional but still very cool, is a formula text field. And this is where you would deliver instructions to your reps of what they need to do on this touch. So looking at this image, I pull up the record. It says touch is 5, so I know I'm going to be making my 6th dial, and maybe it also says leave voicemail or don't leave voicemail. Maybe after call 6 it says send email 3 or something like that. And so you can get very granular and get very prescriptive with your reps on what you want them to do. So this is steps 1 and 2 is creating the fields. Here's some examples. I apologize. So here's some examples of what the call instruction, the touch instruction might say. Once again, we'll have that formula available on the printer-friendly version. Step number 3 is you'll have to create a process builder. So for the 50% or more of people that are listening that are administrators, hopefully you're familiar with Process Builder. They are our friends. They're really wonderful. And what you can do then is look for any time the dials field is incremented. So the dial will go up. It will trigger the Process Builder. And then we will simply, from that same record, change the touches formula by 1. So touches plus 1. Pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot of room for error, which is one reason why I really like this strategy. Now, discussing, why if the dials field is already there, it was installed during the package installation, why would I go through the trouble of creating touches if I can just look at dials? And the answer is dials is a managed field by Inside Sales. So when we consider this strategy and we consider down the road, maybe a record, went through 8 touches, but now it's, been assigned to a new campaign, so we want to bring it back into a seek list. We can't change the dials count. That's hands off. But we can change the touches field. So you can either change it. Let's see. Oh, that's on my next slide. So when you consider these strategies, you always want to consider the exit strategy. So if these records are going to be coming back in 6 months, then that touches field needs to be cleared so that we can pull touches less than 8 into the seek list. Now you could use a workflow rule to clear that touches value. But I would caution you to, think about when you want that workflow rule to be triggered. If you trigger it too early, you may be missing out on some reporting feature. So let me say it this way. I've just had a record that went through 8 touches, and I eventually disqualified it, right? 3 months later, it qualifies for another campaign, so I want to bring it back into the seek list. But before that, if I wanted to run a report to look for, of all of my disqualified records, how many touches did I get into those, or even my converted leads, how many touches did I get into that? And so if you change that touches field too early, then you might be missing out on those benefits. I hope that was clear. Sorry, guys. Talking through some of these things can be a little difficult. Some variations on the touches strategy. You could have in your seek list looking for touches 1 to 3 and space them 24 hours apart. Or you can modify the instructions, and that's really easy just when you're building that formula. But all in all, a pretty straightforward strategy that does give you some flexibility. You could think about making the touches field visible and editable for your reps. So if for their own purposes they want to, I don't know, if for whatever reason it progressed to touch 5, but it still needs to be touch 4, that could get into some reporting fun. But just think about your reps use case, and does it make sense to have it there, have it visible, or maybe just editable by a manager or something. Okay, my third strategy that I wanted to present is a reps choice strategy. So with the reps choice strategy, it's going to be more geared towards, I would say, an account executive role, an account manager role, where I want to be able to elect more freely who should be in that seek list. So it's pretty straightforward. We would have a drop-down list, a drop-down field on the record, and the rep would see that and be able to edit it. And so I've pulled up, here's Douglas Alvarez, and I determine he needs to be on seek list 1. Okay, then we build a seek list looking for records in a contactable status with the seek list selection field set to reps choice 1. Then I create another seek list, same criteria, except it's looking for reps choice list 2, rinse and repeat until you've got a seek list built for each one of the options in that dropdown. So here's kind of the user's experience. Johnny's been assigned leads for his top focused accounts, and he has placed those in the Reps Choice list number 1. Okay, and he has to keep kind of a mental note about what's in his Reps Choice list 1. Yeah, that's too much of a mouthful. I'm just going to call it list 1, list 2, list 3 from here on out. Okay, so Johnny has decided that his top accounts belong to list 1. And then he's made the decision that this new event or this new campaign that his manager wants him to focus on, that's going to be list 2. And then he's got his list 3, maybe for, I don't know, special occasions, birthdays, I don't know, something like that. So he's done the background work. He's assigned those records to the right list. Then he knows from research that 8 to 9 a.m. is a really fantastic time to make contact. So he's going to pull in, he's going to select list 1 for that hour, and he'll use the next record button on the dialer panel and just call through list 1 for that hour. Then he will maybe take a break. Let's see, where am I? He'll take a break, he'll go to lunch, and when he comes back, he'll work on his campaign list, which is list number 2, right? And then when 4 o'clock hour rolls around, he'll switch back to his list 1. And he's making these selections from the dialer panel, very easy. And in between those key calling hours, he's following up on emails, he's checking LinkedIn, he's prospecting. Maybe the prospecting that he's doing in those hours is where he's putting these newfound records into list 3, right? So he's got the autonomy and he's got the flexibility. He just has to keep track of which list is which. So here's an example over the course of 8 weeks of what it might look like. So in this example, Reps Choice list 1, it's an 8-touch cadence over 12 days. And we are assigning all of our campaign XYZ records to list 1. So I'm going to start with 15 records on week 1, and I'm going to apply a 20% deduction week over week for records that qualify or disqualify. So week over week, I'm going to be making contact to these records a couple days apart and up to 8 times. So eventually, all of those records, all 15 of those records will eventually fall off the list, right? So maybe by week 4, that's when I then go in, or maybe I get management to help me or marketing to help me with, mass updating records so that they have Seek List 1 or, Reps Choice List 2 or whatever. If I can make that specification to them and they do the work for me, hey, I want your job. Okay, so week 4 rolls around. We've now enrolled 34 records into our future campaign and to our list 1. Call through those. We get we butt up to week 7, and then I haven't added anything. Okay, now moving back to week 1, concurrently with list number 1, I have campaign ABC. I've got 39 records in that campaign. So, like with the last slide, Johnny gets in the morning and he selects list 1. He works those 15 records first thing in the morning, and then he does whatever Johnny likes to do from 9 to 12. Then he goes to lunch, and when he gets back from lunch, he pulls up list 2, where he knows he'll be working, those 39 records for campaign ABC. Now, as a manager, I would look at this and maybe build a dashboard around the number of records each of my reps has in those 3 lists. So when week 7 rolls around and I have a one-on-one with Johnny and say, Johnny, what the heck, you're pretty light this week. Let me just load you up with some new records. Make sure you've got plenty to dial. So there's some visibility in this, not only for the rep, but also for the manager. Here's another example of the same strategy, but what I want to point out is that I've still got the same 3 lists. They're still 8 touches, 12 days apart, or total of 12 days, And this time, instead of, maybe a BDR role, a business development role, instead I'm applying the same list structure to my account executives. I keep calling account managers, right? So we've got an account manager, and he works with 2 field reps. Field rep number 1 is Susan. And so he says, okay, Susan's list is list 1. And when Susan says, go reach out to these, 50 accounts, or, I don't know, Susan, she's a little impulsive, and she's always saying, hey, follow up on this, hey, follow up on that. And I get emails dropped in my inbox all the time. So I can very quickly pull up that record, apply it to list 1, and then know when I'm dialing list 1, I've captured all of her requests, and I'm fulfilling my responsibility of calling up to 8 times on each one of those requests that she's sent. Okay, so less things falling through the cracks. And again, from a management perspective, or even just from a rep's perspective, when week 6 rolls around and I see I only have 13 records for Susan, that would be a good time to get a hold of Susan or Susan's manager and say, hey, I need some more work. That'd be great. Thanks. Okay, so variations on this strategy is we could make that solution available only for certain teams. So, if we don't want it to be the strategy for the BDR team, but we do want it to be the strategy for the account manager team, then we only make that field visible for the account manager profile. We could involve marketing or management to create or to make those assignments for us. So, hey, marketing, when you send over these types of records, be sure that you always dump them into Seek List 1. So you could, hold hands and get some help for your reps using marketing and some automation in there. Then we've got, considering the limitations of the number of Seek lists you can have. Maybe you determine, demand gen only needs 1 or 2 lists, but account managers, they need more like 4 or 5 lists because, they can decide from a very short cadence to a very long cadence. So these are all just things that you want to keep in mind. Also naming, so that it's very easy and clear to a rep, especially a new rep, right? Hey, new rep, hey, new guy, you go in, and if you want that record assigned to the 8-touch list, boom, or the 12-touch, or the 3-touch, and so on. You can also restrict the field access just to managers. Because, managers, I'm sure you have plenty of time on your hands to go and, do this for them. But I like the idea of the flexibility and the autonomy of, for the reps to have this available to them, but certainly making it so that if managers can help, that, if they have the time, then they can certainly step in when possible. So, 3 strategies, and now I'm curious, of those 3 strategies, which are you thinking might apply for you? We've got, the hours since last call, whether, the simple formula or the complex business hours since last formula. Then we have the touches strategy, where you're determining the cadence and you're determining the instruction, and it's a little more prescriptive than the rep's choice. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. I wish I had thought to put a poll in here to see for the hours since last call, who's already got it. So I don't know. Say raise your hand. Say I in the Q&A if you've already got that hours since last call and are using it. That's the caveat. If you've got it and you're using it, yes. Okay. All right. Great. So, best practices of Seek lists, and these are things that I've come across and are a very firm believer in, and it, you know, simplify, simplify, simplify. If you can do some of these strategies where you've got the field on the record, it's a formula field, it's combining all sorts of criteria, maybe it's title, territory, you know, age. If you can combine those things into a formula field on the record and then just build the seek list off of the one field, you know, maybe it's a checkbox, or maybe it's something that says something like, you know, seek list eligible. Do that. Let Salesforce do the heavy lifting. They've already got the data, so if we let Salesforce do all of that querying, and then let the seek list, let Inside Sales do what we're really good at, and that's the delivery. You know, we've got the dialer panel, the next record button, the seek lists, this, you know, which are stacked lists, right? So simplify, simplify, simplify. Know your reps' proficiency. You know, reps are not Salesforce administrators. We hired them because they're excellent at selling. We want them selling and not fixing lists. We've got to know when to use a domino list and when to use a seek list. And we didn't talk at all about a domino list, but if you don't know what that is, a domino list, that's our one-time use list. That's our, you know, hey, I just got back from a convention. I've got 500 records that I just need called, and hey, thanks so much for coming, dropping by the booth. Hope we can talk soon. Now, those same records will probably filter into the seek list, where we will include them in our overall dialing strategy. But a domino list is one time, you know, these are all my birthdays for this month that I need to call through, or we're in your area for a conference or something. And just know when the best, when it's better to use a one-time use list, and save yourself all that hassle. Okay, then the biggest thing is to put a strategy in place, test it, get feedback, make changes, and then start all over again, right? This is supposed to be something, a living strategy, and, you know, just be sure that your reps understand that. I don't know, maybe though you should put something on the calendar that says, you know, seek list feedback. I only accept seek list feedback once a month. If you missed it, too bad. Because, you know, we know reps are vocal, which is great. We love them. Okay. So where to get more information? We're almost to the top of the hour. There's only so much that I could cover in this webinar. I'm sure you've got other questions. So there's always the community site. We have our fairly new community portal. And, you know, once again, thanks to Joel Robertson for, you know, staying on top of the community portal, posting these webinars. And the great thing about the community portal is what we can do after this webinar is you can talk amongst yourselves which strategies are working for you, which aren't, and why. I'm happy to chime in. Go ahead and @mention me. I should have taken a bigger screenshot because I'm on this leaderboard. I'm so excited. I've got enough points and, you know, participation points that I'm on there. But yeah, go ahead and @mention me, and I'd be more than happy to answer questions. But this is really just the tip of the iceberg. What have you come up with that's working? What have you stumbled upon and have a roadblock with? So put that all up there on the community portal. You also have access to your customer success manager, the support help desk, and then this webinar will be available on demand once again from the community portal. And because you attended today, you'll get a lovely email with the link when that's available. That's it for me as far as what I've prepared. We've got 9 minutes left. So I'll take some questions. Let me pull this up. Okay. Could you please review how to restrict a list? Yes. Okay. So somebody's asking if we only want certain reps to see certain lists. So this is going to be on the main page of your seek list. You go to create a new seek list, and then there's that option here. Let me try and get us to the slide where it describes that a little bit. So here, this assign users. So you have three options. You can assign it only to me, which is going to be helpful if you're creating it and testing it, visible to all users, or you'll have to get more granular with the third option, which is visible to certain groups of users. Now, you can either use specific users or you can do it by role. So if I'm not doing a one-to-one relationship, but rather I'm doing a role, you know, one seek list for this role, one seek list for that role, then roles is what you're going to want to do there. Yes, so Jillian's asking if there's going to be another webinar showing how to set up seek lists. And yes, Jillian, I think we will, you know, inevitably have many more webinars to discuss all sorts of things. And I apologize if this was maybe a little too involved, but I'll take your question and be sure to follow up with you once we've got something. Now, we do have on the community portal tutorials on how to set up seek lists. So maybe that would be a good place to start, is just going through the tutorial. Okay, can you talk about the 7,000 limit again? Yes, if my seek list inquiries come up to 10,000 records, but the seek list is filtered by record owner, will that be a problem? If the record owners have less than 7,000. So let's see, David, how many people are we assigning to that list? I guess that would be the question. If and you know, math, numbers, terrible. Okay, let's see. If we've got 7,000 divided, you said if the record owners have less than 7,000. Wait. Okay, so the thing here, David, though, is we're trying to use filtering to zero in on specific types of records. We would never ever want to create a broad list that just says, if you own it, have at it. We wouldn't want to do that. What we would want to do, though, is we'd want to say, okay, you know, Janae, you have a total of 10,000 records. 1,000 of those records are in a new status, new and untouched, right? So those would be brought into one dialer rule, and that would be fine. Even if I had, you know, 10 users that had 50 new unworked leads, right? I would still be okay. And then the next dialer rule, I could be looking for working leads or something like that. So, but we would never want to do a broad stroke where it would just be every record you own. We'd want to zero in on that. Okay. So yeah, once again, Heather, you're asking for a tutorial on how to create seek lists, and I will be sure to point out the online instructions of where to do that, and then be sure to, you know, review the webinar after to follow up with some good strategies. Okay, let's see. Kevin is asking, when you talk about formulas for the hourly dialing, you mean just adding it to the report, right? When you're customizing it. Let's see. No, okay. So Kevin, when I'm talking about the formula, I'm actually talking about the formula behind the field. So you have certain fields in Salesforce. You know, it could be as simple as a text or a drop-down, a pick list value. But you can also have a formula field that specifies that criteria. So let me come back to layout. So when we're looking at this big long formula here for business hours, that's actually behind the scenes, behind the field. And so it will only populate in the field. I hope that answers your question. But yes, because that field is then there, you can use that in reporting. So in your reporting, look for records, you know, with hours since last call greater than or equal to blah, blah, blah. Okay. So there is no way, let's see. So Corey, so there's no way to restrict the record that comes through to the specific user that is using the dialer. So restrictions would, so, and this is kind of difficult, right? But if we have a situation where I am not limiting the ownership, let me push this one back. So if, let's say we've made it visible to all users, there's a second piece, and maybe that's what you're asking, and I apologize. So there's a second piece on the individual dialer rule that says limit calls to. And this is where you would specify record owner. So on the first page setup, you would say who has access to that list. And then on the second page setup, which would be the specific dialer rule, that's where you would specify limit calls to record owner or no limit. Okay, so sorry, and I apologize that that wasn't made more clear. That is in the tutorials of how to set up a seek list and much more descriptive. But again, I'm happy to have those conversations offline. Okay, where's my Q&A? Okay, so last question. Let's see. Okay, Kevin. So the Salesforce admin has to do it then, a person to have special permissions. I think this is back to your formula question. Yes, a Salesforce administrator needs to set up those fields. There were several items in this presentation that will require a Salesforce administrator. So if you're more on the sales management side, speak with your sales operations, your sales enablement team, and I'm sure that they can, help with any strategy that, well, I actually shouldn't say that. They can help with strategies that you'd like to put in place. Okay, just kidding. We've got one more minute. So this is the last question. Okay, I created a custom priority field in Salesforce, and that is what I use to organize my queries. Great. Okay, so let me just pause right there. This is a variation of the rep's choice strategy, I'm assuming. So we've got a priority field in Salesforce, and either you or the rep can set the priority, so hot, warm, cold, or priority 1, 2, 3, right? It's just a variation on that strategy. Good, bad, good. I love it. Yeah, it's a great variation. Even internally, we've gone back and forth and run the gamut of, to very specific filters to more general, just, hey, let the reps choose or let management choose priority 1, 2, or 3. So great. I love it. Good job, David. Okay, that's it for me. I've got to jump to my next call. I really hope this was helpful. I've enjoyed it very much, and I hope that Joel asks me to come back. All of your questions will be logged, and that will help me greatly to decide, what to cover next time. So wish you all the best of luck in your strategic strategizing, and have a good rest of your day.